Hi there, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Please take a moment to click on the bell icon. We're going to go in the opposite direction today. Click on the bell icon if you'd like to get notifications. Click on the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to our channel. And please, if you have it in your heart, click the like button for tonight's episode. Thank you very much.
So, if you're new to this channel, each week, Todd and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's gospel lectionary reading from the Gospels in the lectionary. And we're going to try to talk about those passages in the context of love and inclusion and societal justice. And our hope is that our conversation, our talking with each other, will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something we might say as we go back and forth would inspire you alongside with us to do more than in our Jesus following than just talking. So, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
You know, Herb, I have to be honest. Um, every week you ask me what the passage is as if you don't already know. You know, this is just a gimmick that we do in programming, but it's such a fraud because you already know. But I'll play along. It's John
Thanks,
chapter
Todd.
10, verses 11 to 18.
If this is your first time watching this show, Todd is in rare form tonight. Todd, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk, is what it is.
Yeah, that's the thing is I have so little to contribute to this
That is
show
not
that we
true.
we have to we have to plug in things where I get a chance to say something that I know because I know so little.
No, it's because I have such a hard time shutting up and letting you speak. We have to put it in there where I have to stop talking.
Well, that there's some truth to that as well.
So what, seriously, what is, I know the subject matter, but what is the passage again? It's in John, I know that.
Yes, it's Jesus as the good shepherd,
Oh,
and he's cares for his sheep, and he will lay down his life for his sheep and take his life up again for his sheep, and that's pretty much the gist of that passage.
yeah. So any thoughts on it? Kick us off.
No, not really. Um, no, I mean it's this is I mean, and you allude to this in your blog this week. I mean, this is classic Jesus imagery, and it's not just classic in the sense of classic for those of us Christians today, but it's actually one of the classic motifs that the early
Maybe
church used for it as
earliest.
well. Yeah.
Before before we developed a theology of Jesus crucified, we had Jesus shepherd.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it may be some of the earliest imagery we have from it of him.
Yep.
But something I did mention in this week's blog is that this shepherd imagery, it is pretty universal in all four gospels. We do a lot of talking on this show about the differences between the synoptics and the Gospel of John. Um, but this is at least imagery that stretches across all of them. Now, once again, John does something very unique with this imagery, but the
Hmm.
imagery itself of Jesus as shepherd. There's a great book. I don't know if I have it easily accessible. I do, but it's on this side. So this book, I don't know if you can see it, Saving Paradise by Rita Nakashima Brock and Rebecca Ann Parker. If you haven't read this book, it's a thick book, but it's well worth your time. Both of these um, fantastic feminist theologians, they do a great job at showing how even in the artwork of early Christianity for the first maybe even 1,000 years of Christianity, the Christian tradition, the artwork that we find is largely of Jesus as shepherd, where the world is, the pastoral plane. There's this pastoral image of the world characterized as a place that's being restored to paradise by this shepherd. It isn't till much later in Christianity and Christian theology, theological development, that we get Jesus on crucifixes or Jesus on imperial thrones. Like the
Mm-hmm.
very, very beginning images and throughout is Jesus as shepherd. So that I think it's worth taking a look at this week. And there's a lot of reference. I mean, there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's some the basis. There's some basis for it in the Hebrew wisdom and Hebrew prophetic justice tradition. I mean, that's where the gospel authors, I think, took it out of, is from the Hebrew prophets.
Mm-hmm.
When they talk
Mm-hmm.
about God sending a shepherd or a shepherd returning to Israel or being given to Israel, it's always in the context of violence, injustice, and oppression being removed from society. The shepherd's going to come and heal society, going to take away the wild animals, and the threat and the fear, and you'll be able to, there'll be enough resources for everybody will have exactly what they need to thrive, and nobody's going to make you afraid. You'll be safe. It's what we at Renewed Heart Ministries call making the world a just, compassionate, safe home for everybody. That's what the shepherd does in the Hebrew prophets, is he comes in and he makes the world safe again for people
Mm-hmm.
to be at peace. I mean, it's distributive justice, but it's safety too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that protectionism. I mean, ism, that sounds bad. Very much the idea of protecting and keeping safe, which mirrors parables that Jesus talks about going out and rescuing the lost sheep and bringing them back into the fold, and even Jesus referring to himself in another place in John as the gate. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
the gate who keeps, you know, only 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 the right people and the right sheep can get in and out. You know, you make sure that no predator or no thief gets in. So there's very much that safety. And you have, along with this, in this passage he talks about the hired hand does not care for the sheep like the good shepherd, and that harkens back also to the idea of there were in Israel's time there were leaders who did not care about their people, and so when these prophecies that you mentioned, Herb, talk about God bringing the people to a safe place and giving them a shepherd who will take care of them as sheep, that means you getting a godly, God ordained leader, a just leader, an equitable leader to take care of you. And so there's that idea too that Jesus is the true leader. You may want to shy away from the idea of king, but um, carer, protector, leader of the sheep.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things firing off for me as you're saying those things, that when this imagery in Ezekiel and Micah was used as the shepherd, God sending a shepherd to restore justice and safety to society, it was the king. This wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
democratic form of government. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It was an imperial form of government where there were kings, and the king was to be a shepherd. And that's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm sure there were kings, quite sure there were kings who didn't care about the people, but only cared about the power, only cared about the
Mm-hmm.
position. And
Mm-hmm.
that made me jump to politicians today who don't really have any interest in governing or trying to make
Mm-hmm.
government work or trying to make
Mm-hmm.
society better for people. All they care
Yeah.
about is being in the position, raising money to keep their position, to win their election, so they can keep their seat in Congress. You know what I'm saying? Where it's not really
Yep.
love for America, or
Right.
even our society. It's love for their position and power and privilege, and just wanting to hold on to that.
Yeah. A lot of hired hands, a lot of fake shepherds. Not very many genuine ones around when you look at our political
So in
reality.
in true John fashion, John does it again this week. He goes there with the reason he's such a good shepherd is because he's willing to lay down his own life for the sheep where the hired hand won't. And that's the reason the Father loves him, is because he's willing to lay down his life. And there's this, again, this kind of self-sacrificial theme here. But then he waxes, this is where it kind of goes off the rails for me, is, it's very different, where in Matthew and Mark and Luke and even in the book of Acts, the death of Jesus, the crucifixion of Jesus, is an unjust act perpetrated by the empire to take Jesus out and silence him. And the resurrection is the overcoming and undoing of that and causing that voice to live on, at least in the lives of his followers. In John, our passage this week especially, there's something here that none of the other gospels do. And Jesus is kind of waxing kind of strongman-ish, is the way it strikes me in today's climate. Jesus is like, nobody takes my life from me. I lay down my life. I voluntarily lay down my life, and I'm only laying it down so that I can take it back up again, so that I can be resurrected. And I know ahead of time what's going to happen, and you know what I'm saying? And I'm doing this on purpose, and nobody's violating me. I'm not a victim. I'm doing this so that I could, and where in the other gospels, the death of Jesus is an injustice by the empire that must be overcome and undone and reversed by the resurrection. Here, the death of Jesus is a portal to greater life. And it's through laying down his life and taking it up again. It's this process of dying and coming back to life. It's just a very different picture where, the goal isn't, the message of resurrection almost gets lost. And it's the dying and resurrecting into a greater life or a greater plane of existence than what we have now, and which is very Gnostic. It's still that Gnostic flavor, where the synoptics are like, no, the death of Jesus was a wrong that God stepped in and said no to, that speaks to our story that injustice doesn't have the last word. John kind of takes that whole stuff, the Johannine community takes that whole narrative and says, no, there's an overarching divine purpose in this, and Jesus is in control the whole time, and there's no risk, there's no, violation. Jesus voluntarily lays it down so he can take it up again. And that doesn't exactly sit well with me. I'm just being honest.
Right. Yeah, I think in light of what we see, again, it does it glorifies the death, and I was thinking about this as you were talking. It doesn't mean I wasn't listening to you. I just also had this thought going through my head, which was that the laying down of his life for the sheep, you could, if you stopped there and you said,
it'd be okay, or if honestly.
If you just said, I am so committed to protecting my sheep's life and keeping the wolves away that I will do everything in my power to keep the sheep from being harmed, including if all else fails, and this would work. If the wolves overpower me or something, then I'm willing to. I love my sheep that much that I would even do that. But it's not this.
It doesn't. But
martyr.
It doesn't. Right. I would be okay with
holy
it
martyrdom
right there.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so that's a sign of how much he loves and is committed. But then he gets into this, and I said this in the beginning of the show, but it's kind of like this I meant to do that type thing. After the fact, you're murdered and you come back to life. He's like, I meant to do that. This was all part of the plan. Nobody took my life from me. I laid it down voluntarily so that I could come back to life. It's just bizarre to me.
Yeah. It's Yeah, it's interesting that, and it's because clearly a different philosophy has taken over the community that produced John. Because most anybody else would say we thought he was gone. We thought everything that we had hoped for in what Jesus was doing was just going to go to waste, and that there was no hope. But then he rose from the dead, and then oh no, this is going to go on. It's the death was a tragedy, and it's the resurrection that was the gift, and the renewed hope. That's
That's right.
that's what we see in the other synoptics. So
In the
it's just
Synoptics
it
and the book of
is
Acts, the good news is the resurrection. Jesus is
yeah
alive again. In
yeah
John, the good news is that through dying, you can reach a higher existence, because death isn't this
mm-hmm.
unjust thing that's a violation. It's what we too can voluntarily embrace, so that we
Yep.
can come back to life again. And Jesus shows us the way through death to life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's scary. I mean, if you want to talk about redemptive death and glorifying death, and trying to sell people on dying so they can have
Mm-hmm.
something special on the other side. But this is, again, the beginnings of, both here in John and in Paul, the beginnings of this afterlife, other world focus that we have railed on so many times in our conversations.
Yeah.
This afterlife focus, the post-mortem focus, rather than the here and now focus. Jesus in the
Mm-hmm.
synoptics is not trying to get people to heaven in an afterlife. He's trying to save them from the hell that they're going through right
Yep.
now.
Yep. That's right.
So it's just different. It's just different. But it's the
And I mean,
seeds that explain where we're at today with Christianity. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's so the truth. For how do I get this going? The in my role as a hospital chaplain, I'm meeting a lot of people, not everybody, but on some floors, in some situations, I am meeting people who at the moment don't know whether they're going to make it or if they're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And and in 98% of the cases, uh, when I'm talking to somebody, they are not excited about the prospect of dying in order to ascend to a higher plane or to go to heaven. They know about the hope of heaven, but they are investing in every possible medical treatment
To
and
stop the process.
praying their hearts out to stay alive now.
Yeah.
And they say to me,
Interesting.
and they say to me, I know there's a better place waiting for me. Listen to the language. I know there's a better place waiting for me, but I'm not ready to go yet.
Wow.
And why would we not all? Now, I've had like 2 or 3 patients who have said, dude, I'm good either way. I mean, if I stay here, I got my family. If not, I'm going to a better place, man. I'm great. I'm just, yeah, I'm dying of cancer, but I'm going. That's like 1 or 2 people who I think, in my mind, they're not facing their reality.
Mm.
They're trying to talk themselves into it, in my opinion. Most of the other people are, without realizing it, saying exactly what any logical human being should say, which is death is horrible, and I want to live this life. And if I can help myself live this life, or if I'm a family member sitting in the hospital room and I can get my loved one to be healed so that they can continue their life and free them from their suffering, that's what I want. And that's what Jesus was doing. He was trying to help people free them from the suffering, free them from the persecution, free them from the bondage in this life, and not trying to provide an escape plan through a dying in order to provide new life. And therefore, the salvation that he was offering, he did not need to accomplish through dying and resurrecting. He accomplished by living so fully.
Mm-hmm,
fully, that
mm-hmm,
he and then resurrecting back unto life again, as in that story. That's the life, is the life here and now. The power of life here is what drove him,
mm.
and what he cared about for his followers.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and that's the Jesus we get in the synoptics, a Jesus that is always saying no to death, a Jesus that is always saying no to injustice, a Jesus that is
Mm-hmm.
always saying no to suffering and seeking to save people from all of those things. Again, when we get to John, death is the portal through which we should. It takes death and reframes it. And I don't know what was going on. John is the last gospel written. I don't know what was going on at the time that John was written, that the Johannine community had to put this positive spin on death with the hope of the
Mm-hmm.
afterlife. I can only imagine and guess at it. I'm not that familiar with that time of Christian history. But there had to have been something that was driving them to do this. But again, one of the things that I thought of while you were talking is today, and some of you know this that are watching this show. My father is in the process of dying. My father has cancer, and he won't be alive for much longer. But I had a very well-meaning Christian person today tell me, well, if you're a true believer, isn't he going on to a better place? You know what I mean? But there's something inside of us that is more synoptic gospels than Johannine gospel. You know what I mean? There's
Mm-hmm.
something inside of us that resists that says, no, death is an enemy. It's not
Yeah.
our friend. It's not our 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 guide to a better place. It's not our, it's not our savior. You know what I'm saying? We get it so
Yeah.
twisted. And I think the seeds of that trajectory, like the very beginning switch of the angle, like if you're going to go in a different path, you're going this direction. And if you're going to go a different direction, it starts with just a subtle shift. I think that subtle shift we're seeing beginning in the Gospel of John, where now, if
Yeah.
we reason this out to its furthest logical conclusion, by the time we get to the end of that angle, depending upon how long we extend those two lines, we get a vast difference between two
Yeah.
different types of Christianity. One kind of Christianity that's focused on the here and now and wanting to make the world a better place and wanting to fight for justice and wanting to bring healing and life. And the other that says, you know what? What's so bad about dying? What's so bad about, there's, just hang on to this life. Just sit back, just bear it patiently. You're going to get to a better
Mm-hmm.
place. Those are vastly different forms of Christianity, and both of them exist today. One of them, I
Yeah.
think, can be traced back to Luke and Mark and Matthew, the other back to John. And again, that's
Yeah.
just my theory. I have no proof of that, but it sure does look like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% agree.
Well, what else we got this week in John? I don't want to trash it too much because I do appreciate that part that you mentioned, where if it had just stopped there, that Jesus was so dedicated to his sheep that he was willing to put his own life on the line.
Mm-hmm.
But even in saying that, you have to wonder, was he really putting his life on the line in the Gospel of John? Because in the Gospel of John, he's saying, there's no risk. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm laying this down on my own volition so
Right.
I can take it up again. That's not
Right.
really the same. It's like he says something beautiful, and then whoever's writing this story in John, in the very next breath, he undoes that beautiful thing that he said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, but it's a beautiful thing that's
Yeah.
initially said. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, you look at his parable about the lost sheep and the good shepherd that goes
Yeah,
out to find the one lost sheep in the
beautiful
in the
imagery.
synoptics. Beautiful imagery, great imagery that just describes the the heart of Jesus going out to the marginalized, those on the edges who have been disconnected from society and bringing them back. It's beautiful. It's excellent. It's
Yeah,
so the shepherd imagery has so much depth and richness to it for understanding the ministry of Jesus. Um,
yeah. I
it's
have
just that
no
John,
no critique of the shepherd imagery. I think that
yeah,
is beautiful. You know, that Jesus
Yep.
as crucified speaks to me of something, you know, that whole glorification of death. And it speaks of a gospel that is centered on death, that worships the death. But a Jesus
Mhm.
as shepherd, it harkens to me to do more than just focus on a cross. It harkens to me to follow. It harkens to
Mhm.
me to follow that shepherd. And then that leads me
Mhm.
to, you know, the ethics. What do you mean follow the shepherd? Well, what was the shepherd teaching you? What is this way of
Yeah.
life? And I want to say to all those that are listening out there that may be watching this, you may disagree with other Christians. You may disagree with us. We can all disagree on how we interpret the dying and resurrection of Jesus. We can all disagree on the supernatural stuff in the Jesus story. We can all disagree on the metaphysical claims in the Jesus story, but what we all agree on at the end of the day are the ethics and the values, the
Mhm.
golden rule, the
Mhm.
Sermon on the Mount. And these are the ethics that for me the shepherd imagery calls us to try to put into practice, to follow that shepherd.
Yeah.
And then once again, we're back full circle to that shepherd imagery, standing for the one that will come and make the world a safe place for all of us again. Because what the shepherds taught us to do is how to love one another, care for one another, take care of one another, how to relate to one another in a safe way. And then that's imagery worth holding on to.
Absolutely. All right,
All right,
man.
man.
Very good. You got a big announcement.
I do. I just found out somebody told me this, and I went and checked it out before the with Todd before the meetings, before this conversations, before this video, before this whatever you call this, before we started this
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah. Exactly what you're saying. But
Well,
let me say this: that what it sound what the way that Herb sounds at this moment. Uh, don't don't take that to critique what he's about to share with you, because the what he's about to share with you is
so
much
excited,
smoother
I'm
and
having a
more
hard time getting it
professional.
out.
Yes.
I'm just falling over myself. I'm so excited. So my
Yes.
new book, Finding Jesus, a fundamentalist preacher discovers the social and political, socioeconomic and political teachings of the Gospels. For a couple months now, it's been available on Amazon. It's been available in paperback and in Kindle. But as of today, it just dropped on Audible. And now you can get the audiobook version. Jeff Moon is the narrator. He is a great guy. Matter of fact, he's going to be joining us on this show next week. Where Todd and I are going to have a conversation with Jeff. And Jeff's just a cool guy. You'll want to be here for that. But go check it out on Audible, Finding Jesus by Herb Montgomery, now an audiobook. If you have trouble reading and you love listening to books instead, or you just prefer listening to books rather than reading them, doesn't matter either way, go check out the audio version. And
Yeah.
also, I always forget to do this, but I just want to thank everybody out there too who supports our work, who supports this channel, who supports Renewed Heart Ministries. If you would like to support our work, you can go to renewedheartministries.com, and there's all kinds of ways there you can do that.
All right.
Do you know what we're looking at next week, Todd? By chance? By chance? By chance? I don't.
I don't. I mean, if you give me 2 seconds. Uh, hey, we're in John again. John 15,
Yay!
1 through 8.
Oh, the vine. I am the true
Yes.
vine. All right. All right. Well, everybody tune in next week for another thought provoking discussion.
And we wish all of y'all a great week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.